This week, Blizzard released their first iteration of an in-game damage meter on the Midnight Beta, and to put it bluntly, it is bad. It feels like it's 2010 and I just downloaded Recount. Now, a bit of a disclaimer, I am aware it is a work in progress, but the purpose of this video is to provide feedback so they fix it. I will start by giving an outline of what it can do. This is the Blizzard damage meter. You can make up to 3 windows, and you can drag and resize them how you would like. There are 8 categories: damage done, DPS, damage taken, healing done, HPS, absorbs, interrupts, and dispels. There is a segment feature that lets you choose between current segment, overall, and previous segments currently with placeholder names. And there is a basic breakdown feature where you right-click someone's meter. Now I will talk about the issues. Number 1, breakdowns. These breakdowns are incredibly basic and oftentimes simply incorrect. There is no percentage view on the breakdown. If I look at DPS, it lists the flat amount of DPS an ability provides and nothing else. Pets are arbitrarily placed at the bottom of the breakdown, so a class like BM Hunter has its breakdown wildly out of order. There are also abilities that are split into several different instances, such as Immolation Aura and Rampage, that on details would be grouped as one, but instead on this meter are put into so many separate entries. There is no view to see what enemies have been damaged in a breakdown. The entire segment is just presented as a block with no reference to enemy damage taken. And the meter counts things that aren't even damage. Self-damage is added to your DPS. A Brewmaster Monk will have about 30% of their DPS as stagger to themselves. Warlocks can just leave Burning Rush on to do 10k DPS to themselves, that counts to the meter. It gets worse than that though. Enemy abilities that do damage to players can show up on the player's DPS logs. In Algethar Academy, the elemental mobs cast Mana Void, which is a debuff that puts a circle around a player that damages allies. The damage done to the allies is attributed to the player with the debuff in the DPS meter. On the double dragon boss in Voidspire during raid testing, there is a damage event that is just constant damage to the raid. It is sourced from Xalatath for roleplay reasons or something, but it is purely just a debuff on a player that is a dot. This, for some reason, is added to the player's DPS meters. It also happens for healing. This is a pull in Seed of the Triumvirate where we were dying, I looked at meters and I was doing more HPS than our Mistweaver until I looked and there was this ability in here. Turns out it is a dot on a player that is leached onto an enemy. I was healing an enemy NPC and it went into my HPS meter. Now let's look at the interrupt breakdown. I interrupted 22 spells in this key. Want to see what spells I interrupted? Here you go. Oh wait, that's just Wind Shear. I used Wind Shear to interrupt 22 times. That's very useful to know. Same thing happens with the spells. Also, I think Warlock Interrupt is bugged to not show up properly because it comes from a pet. I had a Warlock in a key get flamed for not kicking. Issue number 2 is segments. So all segments do not have a name right now, but it is obviously something they are working on as they have placeholder listed. I hope when they add this in, it has some information on what mobs are in the pool, maybe a wipe number, and the duration of a segment. But the creation and removal of segments as a whole is kinda wrong. When you change instance, it will simply delete every segment from your meter. If you want to look at the meters after a key, you better not hearth, because hearthing will clear everything. Pretty bad for this to exist in a world where a key can just get abandoned and you just get kicked out of the instance before you even get a chance to look at the breakdown. And if you reload your UI, it will also delete all your segments. When you start boss combat in a dungeon, it does not start a new segment. That's been a feature of details forever, and I think it's just better that way because damage on the boss is typically a lot lower than damage on trash, so it gets drowned out. And segments were also really bugged in raid testing. Some pools you would be doing 100k burst and some pools you would be doing 20k burst. It was really off compared to logs. Issue number 3 is categories. These are the categories in details. Highlighted in green are the categories in Blizzard's meter. Now I'm not going to sit here and pretend we need all of the categories ported over. I doubt anyone has a details meter set to frags or runic power generated, but some of these are pretty important. I'd say deaths is a must-have for a damage meter. Actually being able to see what you die to in a way other than the really basic death recap feature is incredibly useful. Many other games such as Path of Exile are criticized a lot for having no death recap feature. Meanwhile, Details is out here telling the exact state and timings of damage and healing events leading to a death. Without deaths in a meter, you have to wait until the end of a dungeon to look in the log, if you even remember. And I must admit the Warcraft logs display for a death recap is much less readable than that of Details. I think enemy damage taken is also quite important. Prio damage is definitely the name of the game in Modern WoW. We are currently in a season where Havoc is being played for its prio damage. Season before that, Arcane was played for its prio damage. But it's kind of hard to analyze when that's happening without any information on who is damaging what enemy. I think there's a few more categories that are helpful to look at every now and then, like damage taken by spell, enemy healing done, CC breaks. I would say this is my classification of what categories should and shouldn't be added to the Blizzard meter, but regardless, I think the current categories are not enough. A few other notes about the categories is that you cannot have DPS and damage done in the same category. The standard detail skin shows damage done and then DPS in brackets, which is quite useful because DPS alone, with no reference to combat timer or total damage done, will never tell the full story. And also, I want to showcase that they made a category for absorbs, and I don't know why. Absorbs are already counted in HPS, and I don't really see a world where someone cares to see specifically the amount of absorbs they did. Not that it's bad to have more categories, but it's definitely a choice for them to make that one first. Issue number 4 is the option menu. Now, UI design is actually a hard thing. A lot of the reason Blizzard is struggling to make base functionality like that of add-ons is that they don't want a bloated options menu. There is a big difference between this and this. But then you'll look at the settings for the damage meter, and like half of these options are useless. Firstly, I'll talk about the show spec icon setting. It doesn't work right now, it shows class icon instead of spec icon. I assume they will fix that, but the question is, why is this a setting? I just went and opened up like every stream in the WoW retail section and I didn't find a single UI without spec icons in the damage meter. I know there are people that play without them, but it is so uncommon that I think this check could be something that's just relegated to add-ons instead of the base option. Likewise, there is a tick box for show class color that, if unticked, will make every damage meter bar brown. I don't think I've ever seen someone's damage meter without class colors, and I don't know why you would want that. Also, this lock scroll box, it doesn't work right now, but I don't really see why someone would want to lock scroll. Like, if you were to accidentally hover over the meter and accidentally use scroll, like maybe if you bounce something into scroll wheel, it would be like a rare occurrence. I don't really think it would happen that frequently that it necessitates a spot in the main settings. Looking at these sliders, there is one for height and one for width, but these are kind of pointless because you can just resize the meters by dragging them. You can't do this to the main meter right now, but you should be able to. I don't see why one of the 3 meters should arbitrarily need to be resized in the settings. I'll also add here that there is no feature to snap and lock windows like in details, so you could just accidentally drag one out of place and then you have to fidget to get it back exactly where it was. There is also opacity, which is fine, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone with a 50% alpha damage meter. Now, I'm not saying it's bad to have options, but if Blizzard is trying to avoid option bloat and omitting other options in place of these ones, then maybe they should reconsider some of these. And issue number 5 is just a general lack of features. It is very common for people to use a damage meter as their combat timer. There is no combat timer feature on this damage meter. The advanced breakdown feature of details is also not present on this meter. You can't open this window to see spells, targets, crits, casts, average hit, max hit, buff uptime, debuff uptime, etc. You might say that if someone wants to see this, they can just look at a log, but that's kind of a huge ask. Number 1, not everyone should just have to set up logging. Some people get FPS issues from it, takes up space if you're not on top of it. And 2, you shouldn't have to wait for logs to upload, especially if you're trying out your rotation on dummies. The functionalities of logging are really annoying to get around and you can't check things mid-rotation. Now, in an earlier interview, they said that the damage meter was going to be server-side. I think they silently went back on this. Maybe it was going to be too much technical requirement or something, but it's kind of annoying the limitations of the client-side meter still exist. Like I said before with segmenting, if you rezone or reload, it deletes your meters. I was hoping with the official Blizzard meter that it would be tied to the instance, and if you were to leave to repair or something, you would come back and would still be accurate. It also still has a limitation that if you're 100 yards away, it does not register any damage events. Here I died and I was running back to the pool. As you can see, nobody's damage meter is going up at all. If you try to open the breakdown in combat, it is really buggy. Most of the time it won't open, but sometimes it does. The report to chat feature is not present. However, I think this one might be a bit controversial, so I'll leave it out. And lastly, the features of details that allowed quick and easy use are not present. Instead of right-clicking the meter to change the category, you have to go through an entire nested drop-down menu. And instead of just hovering and clicking once to change segments, you have to click twice. Now, I'm not too worried about the appearance of the meter, because even though I think it could use more customizability, that will likely be handled by an add-on to reskin it, like was done with nameplates, but I'm sure that most of the missing features I listed will not be covered with add-ons. I will say with this video that I am actually an optimist about the UI changes. I think a lot of their UI features are in a workable state with the help of add-ons. I think nameplates, resource bar, unit frames are okay, but I think this damage meter definitely needs some work. Details is so integral to the way that modern WoW is played, and it is the only real way to get real-time analysis, and it helps people so much to improve as players without going through a long, convoluted log review. I think it is a massive shame that the replacement is missing majority of its features. I know Blizzard has outright stated that the damage meter is a work in progress, but it is a beta, and the point of a beta is to get feedback, and this is all my feedback. I hope some parts of this video are already being worked on and are made redundant. I summarized all of my points in the description.